Hambini fans, and welcome to another video that is a cross between a colostomy bag and a sanitary towel. In today's episode, a viewer, well actually a number of viewers, have had a request, and now I'll be able to fulfill it, about these, which are these new style, DT Swiss style hubs that have just come out, and they asked me to tear one down. These are the hubs that I was sent, so thanks to the viewer that sent me them. They are by a company called Ratchet. I think that's how you say it. Ratchet Components. R-Y-E-T. They are 11 speed, disc brake. And this one's the front hub. Now the overall setup of any of these hubs tends to be the same. So behind here, you've got one bearing, and then on the other side, you've got another bearing. Now, a few little things that have happened over time, which didn't used to happen, is if you take this, which is the front hub, the spoke angles have changed. So previously on a rim brake hub, that flange would be further towards the outside. So if we are looking at it as you would on a bike, this is the disc brake side, that will be further out. So you could have a better spoke angle. So this one is fairly, so if we take this, fairly vertical, let's say, as opposed to being much more canted over, which is better because you have a stiffer wheel. So you end up having to fiddle around with the spoke tension. This is the back hub, and you've got the same kind of thing happening here. So you've lost a bit of space, although they did widen it to a certain extent when they moved to disc brake hubs. Bearing in behind there, another bearing in here. So those two support the weight of the bike, and you can actually do away with the free hub and the bike will still remain supported. Inside the free hub, there's two bearings, one here and one here, and then the whole thing is supported on a through axle, and that's just end caps on either end. So let's take the front hub apart first of all. In order to do that, you just pull the end cap off, and then behind there we've got it says TTN bearing. Looks to be a 15mm bore. Yeah. And then the outside is 28, which I think is a 6902. And the other side is also 28. So they're reasonably sized bearings in there. Internally, there is a sleeve which may be difficult to see, but we'll just move that out of the way so you can just about see that there. That's to stop you from over preloading the bearings, because if that wasn't there, you could just ramp the through axle up and then crush them. So that stops that from happening. Now the thing has to be fairly accurately made, possibly a ground finish, in order to get that. These spoke holes, so on the hub side, it looks like they've been drilled first, and then possibly this has been milled, machined flat afterwards. Just judging by the way the marks are. We'll have a look at that a bit later on. Overall, not really much to say about that. I'll put the diametral measurements, reference measurements later on. So this is the money piece, the rear hub with its DT style Swiss ratchet. Now, I said ratchet, not ratchet. To get this apart, again, to pull that end cap off, and then you've got the axle exposed. That looks like a 15mm axle to me. It is. I think that's a 6902 bearing in there. We'll get it apart in a minute and have a look. To get the other side off, oh, that one's a bit stiffer. Pull that cap off, and this is a bit interesting. This is an orange seal, which usually suggests it's a full seal, as opposed to the black seals, which tend to be non-contact seals. So that's that. So now what we can do is we can take the ratchet assembly apart. Now this can be a bit tricky. What I always recommend is you do it this way, because when you pull, it can just end up all over the floor. got away with that lightly, so that goes on there. This is the free hub, and the outside of this is fairly standard. So you've got your standard Shimano splines in there, Hyperglide splines. That bit's been machined. That bit doesn't feel like it has. We'll have a look at that later. This bit, which is where the ratcheting happens, these two parts, so this one here and this one here, appear to be identical, and they probably are to reduce the parts count. That has some small ramps and some flats on it, and that is how the ratchet works. So in that direction, you can see it's slipping. If I turn it the other way, it engages. Now the only thing to stop that from engaging or disengaging is in this side. There's a spring, and that will move it in and out. So that's what provides that force. The actual mechanics of this, or the spacers involved, are fairly standard. So you've got that, which is, I mean, that's got to be steel of some description. It's not aluminium by any means. This looks like it's 7000 series. So in here there's a little spacer, which we'll try and fish out. So that's, I think, nylon, but again, it's just a spacer. And then behind that, that looks like a 6802 bearing to me. Let's just check. Should be about 24. Yeah, so that's a 6802. And that one's a 6802. Now in between there, this tube thing, which is actually a fairly slack fit, stops you from over preloading it. I mean, that fit's actually all right, it's not too bad. And then you've got some splines that are in the outside of there, and that gives you your drive. Now, in terms of sealing, there's a seal there, which is rubber, and then the secondary seal here, which is also rubber. Now that's hiding the splines that are in that side. So we've got some more splines in here. So behind that, let's just make sure we don't get these all the wrong way. Got a spring, which is that. Spacer, which is that. And then you've got exposure to the bearings. Now that bearing in there looks like it's a non-contact bearing. I'm pretty sure it is. Overall, not too much to say about that. So this is the front hub, and if we zoom, get it into focus. So what we're looking at now are the flanks of the disc brake splines. They are well machined, there's no doubt about that. Checked all of them lot. Nothing wrong with them at all. Yeah, there's a bit of coating on there, but yeah, overall you'd accept that. And moving inwards again, this is, well, it's part of the assembly really. There's nothing really to write home there. So these are the spoke holes, and the drillings in there are a bit crap. They basically just haven't got rid of the swarf. And there's a bit around there which you can just about make out. The same again in that one. It's just there. And that one. And that one. So that's all of them, basically. So that's not so good. Now if we flip this over and do the other side, then in here, which is the flat side, I mean, this looks like it's been drilled and then milled flat afterwards. I don't think it's been done at an angle. And they're all right. I mean, it's just about to see where the marks are from where it's been machined. And the same again there. You can't see them to the naked eye. But again, there's a bit of you know, you can see the corner of it, which doesn't look so great. To the eye you can't see, but under a microscope you can see that it is far from perfect. You see the corner is damaged. That one, it might even be where it's been held. It looks like a compression mark. And then again there. So it might even be where it's been dripping off, but yeah, doesn't look so great. But it's not a showstopper by any means. But the swarf inside, that you don't really want. These are the toothed rings, and they're just fairly rough manufactured. I'm not even sure they're machined. I imagine they would have to be, but looking at the angle of the top of them, I'm not sure if they are. Yeah, it's just rough. There's not really much else to say about that. Doesn't look great under a microscope, but you're not really going to notice that because it's static when it's running. It's just engaged once and that's it. These, on the other hand, which are the ramps and the flats, they need to be good. And the flats are, and the ramps are as well. I mean, it's perfectly acceptable. It looks rough, but once it's engaged, that's it. The other thing is, you're probably only engaged on a few of these. So I think that's 50 or 36, however many there are. Once you're under load, you're probably only engaged on, like, 3 or 4 maybe. So the load's going through them, stressing it. And then eventually, as they go over time, they'll all bed in. So not that great to look at, but yeah, passable, I'd say. So this is an example of the free hub, so the 11-speed road free hub. This area around here just doesn't look like it's been machined at all. There's not really much of an issue with that. This has been machined. You see the machining marks in there. That looks all right, to be honest. Again, rough there, machined there. It's probably my fingerprints, actually. Yeah, you can just see the machining marks in there. And then if we have a look at, this is the engagement of the flanks. So they've all been machined, and they're all actually really good. Yeah, not a lot wrong with them. This is the seal that is on the bearing. Looks like it's an NBR seal. Oh, sorry, on the free hub. Looks like it's an NBR seal. Fairly run-of-the-mill. There's nothing like Viton or anything like that in there. So we've got a piece there and another one there. So it's 2 seals. Well sealed. So this is the rear spoke holes. And yeah, more of the scabbiness there. That brown stuff is actually grease, so don't worry about that. But you can see the metal around here, it's just not very clean. So again, yeah, I mean, if you run your finger over it, it is quite sharp. Right, it's that time of the show again. It is time for PowerPoint. Today, I'm not quite sure how to approach this one. The $80 Ratchet. This is supposed to be a play on words of riot wheel hub by Hambini, aged 5. I mean, I'm not really sure where to start with this one, but let's just check the pen is working. I've learned to write joined up look. This is Ratchet's listing on AliExpress. So they sell a load of wheels and various other bits and pieces. The hubs that the chap had sent me are these ones. So these are the ultralight road hub with the star ratchet, DT straight pull 24H hole centre lock, blah blah blah. They are at the moment £54.16 and £7.33 delivery. Now, even if you add on the VAT and all of that kind of stuff, you'd be looking at well under 80 quid. So, $80 to get a set of hubs. That is a real steal. Now, this is an arrangement of pretty much a generic hub. Almost all hubs are designed in the same way. This is the rare for info. They all have 4 bearings. The exception to this is some Shimano and Novatec hubs where the free hub screws in and becomes a supporting part of the bike to support the bike. This is just a generic drawing I lifted from somewhere. So the blue bit is the free hub. When you stop pedaling, it's disengaged. When you start pedaling, the drive comes through here, and then through these pawls into there. Now obviously this Riot hub doesn't quite have that. It's got those 2 serrated discs in there that grab onto each other with the ramps and the flats. But the bearing arrangement is the same. So you have this bearing on the non-drive side, this bearing that's on the drive side, and that is enough to hold your bike up. So just those 2 bearings. These 2 bearings here and here are in the free hub, and you need those just to support the free hub. Now if I erase all the ink on the slide, there are a few little things in here that you need to be aware of. One of the key things is this tube that's here, so around there. The object of that is to keep the 2 inner races sufficiently apart so they don't get crushed. So they limit your preload. So as you apply load on there, that bit and that bit, they are fixed in space. The rest of it, so this bit and this bit here, so on the actual hub bearings, they are free to obtain preload from, if you're using a rim brake, a QR or a through axle. These are the runouts. Now please don't take this as gospel, and I've just lifted a picture of a DT hub off the internet because it was fairly clear. This represents my DTI, so dial test indicator. You usually see me with those things, Mitutoyo. And I basically put this, fixed it here, and then I ran my DTI across it in various places. Now these numbers, 0.03, they are all in fractions of a millimeter, and that details how eccentric the movement is. So if you've got a perfect circle, you would get 0, but what's happening is the wheel, or the ratchet, is not perfectly in the middle, and it's going slightly in an eccentric orbit. So it's 0.03 millimeters here, and then 0.05 millimeters there, 0.02 there, and 0.04. What you can clearly see is the free hub is not as well machined, geometrically, as the rest of the hub. So that looks like it's been done somewhere else, I'd guess. Now there is a couple of other things to note in here, and that's mainly around, you've got a tolerance stack up. So you've got a series of holes on the inside and the outside. So if the hole for the bearing is slightly off, then the outside is going to be slightly off, and then the reading that I take, so 0.03, it might be that the outside is perfectly round but the inside is slightly off. There's also some bearing clearance in there because it's not loaded. So yeah, this is, I wouldn't say it's particularly bad. I mean, normally you'd look for zeros, but again, I'm just pointing it out. It's nothing that I would really worry too much about on a bike. If it was more like a big machine and you've got 130 millimeters from one end to the other, and you've got like 40 microns of run out and 50 microns of run out, yeah, it's a bit of a different deal. But on a bike, not really much to write home about there. So overall, this isn't perfect. I mean, the quality of the machining, it just looks to be a bit rushed. It's not overly bad. Obviously, you've seen the little bits of swarf and stuff that are stuck in there. That's, if you can blow it out or put a drill bit down it, or a piece of welding rod just to poke it out, that's not the end of the world. Okay, you're only spending $80 or quid on it, but wouldn't really worry too much about that. I mean, a big advantage for this one over the DT is it uses standard size bearings, and you also don't need a special tool to dismantle it. Now when it's locked, there's not really likely to be any discernible difference to any other hub. You're not going to feel 30 microns run out, you're not. And this design of hub is used by 9Velo and others, and you'll see if you have a look at one of my other videos, they're in there. Now, just before we go any further, let me show you the price difference. So this is that page I showed you earlier with the AliExpress DT hub, so with the Riot hub. So both hubs, front and back, let's call it 80 quid. It's listed there as 55, but let's call it 80 quid. This is a DT Swiss, just the back, and it is 268.99. That's significantly more expensive. So if you divided the other one and said it was like 40 quid or 50 quid, you'd be spending like 6 times to get to this. Now, do I think it's worth that? No. I mean, I've got a DT hub coming next week for the same teardown, and then yeah, it's just not worth it in my opinion. Right, if you've got any questions or comments, whack them in the box below. As I mentioned earlier, the DT hub will be getting teared down next week. I think it's a 180. Thanks to the person who sent me the hub in. I'm very, very appreciative, and I've got a few other bits and pieces that people have sent in that I'm catching up on. And as always, till next time, keep banging your hairdresser.